My name is Teresa Johnson, and I teach at Chamberlain Middle School in Carlisle, Ohio. I delivered an English language arts lesson with my colleague, Katie Leakin, on December 1st. Our students are 7th graders and they are gifted. We met 3 times for a total of 45 minutes to plan our co-taught lesson. The lesson lasted for 90 minutes, and we completed our co-teaching evaluation form by face-to-face conversation. Now I'm going to go through the questions. What tools of inquiry, instruction, of discipline did you use as you planned your content for your co-teaching lesson? We used Tier 2 words from the PARC assessment. We used Marzano's Vocabulary Graphic Organizer to teach the vocabulary, and we also pulled in the art to encompass all learning styles. Is there anything you would change in this lesson to improve the tools of inquiry or instruction of discipline for the lesson? I would do a close reading next time about Andy Warhol to build more background knowledge. We showed him in a PowerPoint, and the kids were really interested, and it would have been great to do a more close reading on him. What learning and performance modifications were made for students identified as gifted to enhance your lesson? This lesson was exclusively for a gifted classroom. That's what I teach, and so this was written for my gifted students. Is there anything you would change in this lesson that would further enhance creativity? I feel like this lesson was pretty complex. They had to use the Tier 2 words in their explanation of their selfie. So, in addition to the vocabulary pretest, we went over the words that as a group the majority missed, and there were about 5 words out of the 10 that they needed further study on. And so they used a Marzano's Graphic Organizer to help study the words, where they wrote down a description, they wrote down examples, they wrote down non-examples, and they had to sketch the word. And so with that, they took those words and used them in an explanation of their selfie. So they made it pretty complex by having to use these words. What assessment tools were used to help you select, adapt, and create materials to differentiate instruction? This is where I used the pretest for the entire class to determine which words we needed to study, because with the gifted students, they are very well-spoken, and a lot of the Tier 2 words they already know. So we just pre-tested the first 10 on our list, and what they needed as a class, the majority of the class needed, are what we used to study and use in the rest of our lesson. How did you modify the curriculum to address the wide range of advanced knowledge and performance level for high-ability learners? Since my class is all gifted, the lesson was written directly for them. So when I wrote the lesson and built this lesson, I based it on my gifted students' learning abilities already. What evidence-based practices do you use when you designed and implemented your lesson? I used Marzano's vocabulary technique, which I've already kind of discussed, where they had a graphic organizer, and they would write down the word, they would write down the description, which is the definition, which we would determine as a class what the best and appropriate definition was for what we needed. They would write down examples of the word, they would write down non-examples of the word, and they would sketch the word so that they were able to get a clearer and more complex knowledge of that word. How did you create a safe, inclusive, and culturally responsive learning environment that fully engaged students? This class is very homogeneous in socioeconomic, in ethnicity, and basically everything there. The town is pretty homogeneous altogether. So what I did and what I would do, since most of my students already have smartphones, in fact they're basically better than my smartphone, and they know about selfies because they tend to take them all the time. If they didn't know about smartphones and how to work them, I would probably give a student my phone and let them play around with it and familiarize themselves with what that is. But fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know which would be the case. I don't really have any students that of any other culture or anything that I would have to do in this lesson or in this class. What evidence-based instructional strategies did you use to enhance creative thinking and problem solving? In this case, we talked about identifying relevant information. Since the selfie itself is literally a snapshot of a scene, they had to choose a character from The Lightning Thief in which to draw their selfie from their point of view, and they had to put the setting behind them of something that was relevant to the story, that their character, a situation that they would be in. And so they had to really think long and hard about the setting behind them. So not only are they studying point of view, but they're also kind of thinking about the setting and how important it is. And so I felt like this was very relevant information. So this is where their critical thinking came in. At the top of their selfie, they also had to write text messages from their character to another character, and they had to put a hashtag in. And so since this is very limited conversation, they had to figure out what was relevant to say in so many words. And so that was very critical thinking, because they had to think of what was the most important thing to say. Explain the effective communication and motivational instructional strategies used to help facilitate understanding of the subject matter. Some of my students really struggled with the art portion. They're just not very artistic, and so they were worried about, every little thing, and they kept making sure, they wanted me to reassure them that this tree was in the right place, or, the color of their character's hair was right. And so I just kind of encouraged them and let them know that it's okay. I'm not judging you on your artwork. It's more of the relevance of the scene. And so that was difficult for some of my students who are very successful at everything. And when it came to using art for an assignment that they were graded on, they were very insecure. And so we had to talk about how some students are really good at art, and then other students are really good at the writing, where these guys kind of just went through the writing and they were very successful at that, and they were able to put their tier 2 words in very easily, whereas other students were better at the art. And so that was a good life lesson for them to learn, that sometimes they're not good at everything, but if you try and you put forth the effort, then it'll be fine. How to use learning preferences in the lesson to differentiate. Well, that's kind of like the art. Some kids were like, this is awesome, I get to be creative, whereas it's usually just right or wrong answers. And so they were very happy about that, and others were so excited to be able to write and use their descriptions in a more creative atmosphere. And then other kids just typically like to take a pretest and they want all the answers correct, and they were excited to do that. So we kind of tried to work in as many learning preferences as we could. Explain how you apply the elements of effective collaboration in this experience to be a resource for your colleague. We had great conversations before, during, and after the lesson. We have worked side by side for about 10 years, and so we have a great relationship anyway, and she's very willing to try new things with me and kind of go with my crazy ideas sometimes, and she's very supportive. And so I think we set a good example for the rest of the staff as far as collaborating and trust and working together. And besides changes already mentioned in numbers 1 and 2, are there any changes you would make to this lesson? I definitely think the close reading, because these particular students are so interested in everything that when they saw some of the selfies that I used in a PowerPoint, they were so excited to learn about the artist, and there simply wasn't enough time to do that. And so I think next time I would make the time to do at least a close reading about Andy Warhol, which they kind of found the most interesting because he was the most recent of the artists that I showed their selfies, and so and he had crazy hair, and so they were really interested in that. So I definitely would do something like that next time. So here's a couple of the selfies. This is Percy Jackson, and he's jumping off the St. Louis Arch, and their hashtag is brave, and the other hashtag is insane. So that was kind of you can see that the artwork isn't the greatest, but it shows exactly what I wanted. I wanted the character, and I wanted the setting behind it, and this was kind of a big scene in the book. And then another one was one of Medusa. She was someone they encountered at the Annie M's Emporium. And so this one says hashtag snake hair. And so this was a student that sometimes struggles with writing, but is really good in art, and she really enjoys it. And so this is something that she really took to heart and put a lot of effort into. So thank you for watching my video. I really enjoyed doing this. I enjoyed the class. Thank you for understanding it and everything like that, and I greatly appreciate it. So have a great day.